All right, what is up, guys? Welcome back. Evan Aldo here. Here is the new trade that I am in. I did post this yesterday when I entered it in the Discord, VIP and Aldo Empire VIP Discord. Those channels, not to toot my own horn, but I saw the setup for ETH. You had the bounce. It looked good. Obviously, talked about that in the Discord. I had a good amount. I did lose two trades, like I mentioned in the last video, an AVAX long, I think an ETH long as well. They got stopped out. I mean, I was not liquidated. Luckily, I was not trading on Binance. So yeah, this one's over on BidFi. And yeah, and I mean, I looked at, on Breakout, for prop trading too, no liquidations, everything, no hanky-panky there. So, I mean, when you look at this, I mean, I think obviously, I mentioned this in the last video too, but obviously, it seems pretty obvious Binance had some, hanky-panky going on. It's the only exchange that had, that nonsense. I mean, the reputation's just terrible. I guess the motivation is just greed, it seems like. But yeah, anyway. So got this new trade in. If you guys are interested in making some of these trades, check out the Discord down below. If you want one free month in the Discord, if you sign to any of these exchanges, deposit at least $100, BidFi or BloFin. Down below, BidFi doing a limited time deal up to October 17th. You can get 30% deposit bonus up to 3K holding my link. In addition, you get 20% for fees for life with my link. BloFin, 20% cash back, and there is a deposit bonus as well. Make sure you open a support ticket if you deposit at least $100 in either of these exchanges with your UID or your email, and we'll get you sorted for a free month. We've got Nightshade in there. We're actually, I think, shorted this this drop down. So yeah, so check it out. K-Mac as well, great analyst. So yeah, ultimately, when you look at Bitcoin here, you've been in this long range for a while. You're either going to break upward or break downward. And I think the big kind of low to high place would probably be, well, it's a little bit subjective, but I mean, if you break upward, you got some technical targets up to 140, up to those areas. On the low end, it would be 130. Obviously, if you break downward, and I think if you do break downward, this cycle is likely over. This cycle is likely over. If you do, I guess, lose 100K or some of these areas right there, the cycle is likely over. So yeah, but I think in all likelihood you should break upward. You got your big jump up, and it is looking in a lot of ways towards kind of the end of 2017, especially on a lot of altcoin, Bitcoin evaluations. We'll talk about that in just a second, but short term, money flow is coming up. If you look right here, I guess, from top to low right there, you break above where we are right now, next target 120. So potentially, if all goes well here, I do think that you could hit 130 by the end of this month, early November, that kind of area right there, that 129. 18 months after Bitcoin halving, that would give you the top at the end of this month, I guess. Generally, that's how it's always been. I guess it could extend longer, but we'll see what happens. I think in all likelihood, potentially, alts in Ethereum would extend longer if you see a peak, maybe 130, 140 for Bitcoin later this month, a peak about a month or two later for ETH and a lot of alts. So that could potentially happen. I think for both Bitcoin and Ethereum, the next, Bitcoin a little bit different. We're still waiting for kind of the green dot here in the 2 week, 3 week. Yeah, the same thing, but the next kind of red dot, which you may get in December, could be your major kind of sell signal. And I think the one on Ethereum on that 3 week is going to be, stronger here. You're just going back and forth here in the weekly with Bitcoin, so it doesn't mean anything to me unless you kind of lose, make a lower low here and lose 100K, those type of areas. So yeah, ultimately looking pretty good. Now, if we move on to Ethereum, here's probably your best case scenario into November in the next 2 months, 7,300 right there. Lower time frames, you're back in this range, and now if you can break, you're either going to break upward or downward. You break downward, lower low, your cycle's probably over. 3,300 would not be good, but if you break upward, and I think you will, 5,800 could potentially be what you would see early, later this month at the earliest, maybe November later. I guess you maybe could reject again off of 5,000, but I think that this time, if you break above 5,000, you're looking at probably 5,600 at least. So a lot of good stuff here. I think a lot of good stuff here, and that's part of the reason I took this long. And a little trigger wave right here in the hourly, that could bring you even higher, up to 4,300, maybe even up to your old all-time high, that 4,800 area. And I think this jump so far, 19% upward. Who's to say you can't get another 15, 19, 20% upward right there? So a lot of good stuff there. ETH versus Bitcoin, pretty big area you bounced off of. This is like a giant kind of reverse head and shoulder situation. I don't think you're going to jump up to 0.08 or anything that high, but into the end of the year, 0.05, I think there's a good shot at that, potentially outperforming Bitcoin quite a bit here. Bitcoin dominance, big wick upward. The thing I wanted to show you guys, it was pretty similar to some of these. Let me just take that off there. That wick upward, November of 2017. Then you came. This was crazy volatility. I don't know if that would be wild if that happens. Who knows? But you know, I think there's a good shot that you could continue to kind of reject from this, and more money could flow into Ethereum now. And I'll show you, the other charts that would support this too. I think the other thing too, yeah, some of these red dots, anchor waves, trigger wave in the 3-day would be strong here to potentially break downward and maybe even get down to, some lower levels. Maybe you got halfway there. I don't know about this low, but maybe down to this level into the end of the year. You follow that word, January, February. It's possible into January, again down to 52% again. Total 3. This is interesting. Versus Bitcoin. You had this low here. That was your low. End of October, I think it was early November or whatever. And then you got a wick up. You came back down, higher low. I don't know. But, I think you got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yellow X's. I think you could show some strength here. I think you should, especially, breaking above these points, you could show some strength here. And a lot of money could potentially flow into some altcoins now after what we saw. So that's good there. Others versus Bitcoin too, huge area. That was your altcoin season there in 21. That was the start of your altcoin season in 2017 as well. So, I mean, who's to say you can't jump up a lot here? It was 170%. This one was, 300%. That altcoin, that was actually crazier on others versus Bitcoin. So here to 300, maybe back up to these areas, back up to where you were in evaluations like October of 22. I don't know, but I think there's some potential. Others versus ETH too. That area right there, May of 23. I think a lot of coins potentially, higher risk obviously, but potentially could outperform ETH a little bit here. We look at Chainlink. That's one that I've been talking about potentially making a new all-time high this year for a while. Still making higher lows here. This is what I like on Chainlink, still making higher lows. If you can break above, I don't know, this neckline, which would be at 27, you're not that far off. That's a new all-time high, or an old all-time high back to $52, which held up pretty well. I got that jump there. A lot of things are up a lot, 30% right now. So yeah, Avalanche still making higher lows here. You can't argue with that. Still making higher lows and potentially back up to $40 at some point here. Some people have given up hope, but we'll see what happens. Thing two for Avalanche, and I'm not even going to bother with those Binance charts. There's all Fugazi, but this is a double bottom potential on Bitcoin. You may outperform Bitcoin for a few months here. So there's that potential. XRP, been looking at that a little bit. You're still in the same range. I do think that you got a good shot of breaking up to $4 eventually here, probably making a new all-time high, maybe even up to $6 by the end of the year. These wicks downward usually are big opportunities. Cardano as well. You're still making higher lows. Here. I mean, can Cardano break upward? This is an interesting, the neckline would be here. Can this break up to $3? I don't know about $3, but can it break up to like $2? Maybe. Got a decent shot. A lot could happen in a few months if you look at compared to this jump or this jump. I think we could be headed towards that. And the thing too, I don't have it up right now, but fear and greed is making a higher low, I believe, or double bottom. You have not been in extreme greed in a long time. I think you're overdue for that. So yeah, I mean, that's generally the things I'm looking at right now. There's a lot of possibility here. You took away everyone's money in this thing. A lot of people got liquidated. Nobody wants to buy alts right now. That doesn't mean they're going to go up, but no, everybody's, very highly afraid. When there's blood on the streets, that could be the time. Potential 2 or 3 X's here. Ethereum maybe up to 7,300. So a lot of potential here. This market is looking really good. We'll do a voice chat in the Discord relatively soon. If you guys enjoyed the video, always smash the like button. I'll see you guys really soon. Goodbye.